A Hole in the Wall, Chapter 10 of the book. Betel Nuts and Other Stories by Simeon G. Silverio, Jr. Ano ang ginagawa mo, Dian? What are you doing there? Their newly arrived maid, Milagros, shouted from the window of their apartment on the second floor of the printing press of Simeon's family on Platerias Street in Quiapo, downtown Manila. The girl across the street looked surprised and hurriedly went inside a 3-foot-wide alleyway. Milagros was puzzled and could not fathom why her barrio mate Marita, whom she had not seen for years, seemed to avoid her. "You know why?" Simeon's mom asked Milagros when the latter told her about the incident. "She was embarrassed because she's a prostitute in that brothel across the street." Milagros could not believe it. Marita left their barrio more than a year ago, recruited by an agent to work as a maid in Manila just like her. How Marita ended up a prostitute was a mystery to Milagros. Mang Paco was an 80-year-old man living on the mezzanine floor of a typesetting shop beside the printing press of Simeon's family. He was the father-in-law of Mr. Leonzares, Spanish-speaking owner of On Time Typesetting. A retiree, Mang Paco lived in the shop and guarded it, especially on evenings and weekends when the business was closed. As a young boy, Mang Paco was astride a branch of a tree when he witnessed the Philippine national hero Jose Rizal executed by the Spanish Guardia Civiles, civil guards, at the Luneta, then known as Bagumbayan. After business hours, Mang Paco would sit on a chair near the sidewalk and watch people go by. Occasionally, he would chat with some residents in the area, including the prostitutes and pimps of a brothel across the street. The prostitutes and pimps were always on the street soliciting business, especially in the evenings. Sometimes Mang Paco would invite a prostitute to his mezzanine room, and Simeon would always wonder why. Simeon's Ka Mawel, Ka is an address of respect to an elder cousin, worked as a compositor in the composing room on the mezzanine floor of their printing press. A compositor put together movable types, slags, and cuts to compose the layout of a printing job. They only had letterpress machines then. Offset printing in the Philippines was rare. Mawel was born on Christmas Eve, hence he was christened Emmanuel. His close relative eventually shortened his nickname Manuel to Mawel. When Mawel's father, Ikong, suddenly died of complications from diabetes in his early 40s, his family was left without a breadwinner. Mawel's older brother, Toy, was already working as an assistant manager in the printing press. His elder sister, Lita, later became secretary. A few months after his father died, Mawel quit high school to work in his aunt's printing press. Simeon remembers the first day his Ka Mawel reported for work. It was already 2 o'clock in the afternoon and he was hungry. "Do you have any food left?" he asked the maid. "No," he was told. "Do you have leftover rice?" "Yes," was the reply. "Do you have coffee?" "Yes." It was the first time Simeon saw somebody eat rice with coffee. One evening, when the typesetting shop was closed, Simeon saw one of the prostitutes, Marita, go inside Mang Paco's quarters. "I wonder what they would be doing inside," Simeon wondered aloud. His Ka Mawel, who was working overtime, passed by and heard him. "Do you want to know?" he asked with a smile. He motioned Simeon to follow him in the composing room in the mezzanine and showed him a small hole on the wall between the printing press and the typesetting shop. The hole was covered by a calendar. Simeon looked through the hole and saw Mang Paco on a chair facing the girl who was sitting on the edge of a bed. Simeon thought something he hadn't seen before would happen. He waited and waited until his Ka Mawel, who was working on a layout, gave him a chair to sit on. Eventually, Simeon's neck was strained, and all the two did was talk for an hour, until Mang Paco escorted the girl out. On a few occasions, when Simeon would see Mang Paco go inside the typesetting shop with a prostitute, Simeon would look through the hole only to see the two talk to each other. By that time, Marita had shed off her inhibitions and shame and openly plied Platerias Street to solicit customers. She still refused to talk to Milagros, the maid, and acknowledge her presence. Oftentimes, Marita would go up to Mang Paco's room in the mezzanine floor. As always, whenever Simeon would take a peek, they would just spend the time talking to each other. One time, Simeon saw Marita crying while Mang Paco was talking to her. A few weeks after that incident, Marita was no longer seen around the neighborhood. Even Milagros wondered why. One morning, they learned Mang Paco died in his sleep. Simeon went up to the mezzanine floor to take a last look at him through the hole. Mang Paco was lying stiffly in his bed as people stood beside him. 30 minutes later, his body was brought outside and placed in a hearse waiting outside. Simeon's mother later received a letter from a sister of Milagros informing her that the maid's mother had died. His mother was advised not to tell Milagros about the death and allow her to go home. 6 months remained in Milagros's contract with the Elga Employment Agency, a customer of the printing press and where his mother always got domestic help. But Simeon's mother was compassionate enough to release Milagros from the contract. In just 2 days from receiving the letter, she helped Milagros prepare for her trip. Simeon's mother gave the maid her 6 months' pay plus extra money so she could buy things for her relatives back home. "You buy this black dress, it looks good on you," Simeon's mother told the maid, knowing it would be handy during the funeral. "What would I need that for?" Milagros asked. "I prefer this red one for our town fiesta." Simeon's mom insisted, but Milagros refused. Finally, his mother bought the black dress for her maid as a gift. They brought Milagros to the pier where an inter-island vessel that would take her home was docked. On the ship deck, cots were placed side by side where the passengers would sleep during the few days' trip. A year later, Simeon's mother received a letter from Milagros asking for money so she could go back to work. This time, Milagros wanted to enter into a work agreement directly with his mother, most with no employment agency between them. Milagros wanted to keep the agency commission for herself. It was the same old Milagros who came back to them that summer. She was as usual chatty and boisterous, sometimes too talkative for her own good. She claimed she worked as a teacher while she was in their barrio. When Simeon's mom probed further, she found out Milagros was a teacher. All right, but a teacher of Monet. She taught people how to bake the bread Monet in a bakery store. "Even my mother and my sisters became my students," she boasted. "But I thought your mother died?" Simeon's mom asked. Milagros became quiet for a while, caught in her own lies. She later confessed the letter regarding her mother's death was just a ruse so she could go home before her contract expired because she was homesick. Simeon's mom went berserk. She exploded with a litany of accusations all directed at the lying Milagros. "I even bought you a black dress, gave you extra money, bit my tongue so I wouldn't slip and tell you about your mother's death, and all the while, you and your relatives were lying to me, taking me for a ride." In an instant, the welcome mat unfurled before Milagros was taken back. It was an awkward moment as Simeon was holding on to a nice native coin purse, a product of Milagros town the maid gave him as pasalubong, welcome gift. Finally, Milagros spoke. "But I have good news, Manang. Simeon's mom might be mad because an unschooled girl from the province tricked her, but deep inside, she welcomed the return of Milagros because she was a reliable domestic help." "What?" she asked, trying to show to Milagros she was still mad. "Do you know who is the owner of the bakery I worked for?" "Who?" "It was Marita." "Marita, the prostitute from across the street?" Simeon's mother asked. "Yes," Milagros answered. "Marita came back with a lot of money and put up a bakery business." "Where did she get the money?" she was asked. "You know Mang Paco, the old man who lived next door? He became her friend, and when she told him about her problems, he gave her the money to buy her freedom from the brothel operators. Mang Paco even gave her extra money as capital to invest in a business back home." Simeon then realized that despite his vigilance and passionate crusade, spending hours peeping through a hole to catch Mang Paco in the act, the old man was just giving grandfatherly advice to erring prostitutes, and eventually gave his remaining savings to one before he died. It was not surprising when Milagros told them the name of Marita's business, Mang Paco's Bakery. At least, it's not Marita's Monet, breast like buns, Simeon thought, his mind still dirty to that day. And that closes the book on this matter. Subscribe to this channel to listen to more enjoyable stories like this. This is episode 10th of the YouTube channel, Our Life and Times Stories. Betel Nuts and Other Stories is published by Papyrus Books with email address papyrusbooks@yahoo.com. To order a copy of the book, go to amazon.com and enter the name of the author, Simeon Silverio, in the browser.